Welcome to the Centaur Podcast. I am Cameron Adibi, and I interview others about the unique and profound relationships between horses and humans. In each episode, we delve into the dynamics of these connections, examining how they are formed, nurtured, and celebrated. From the emotional bonds that develop through companionship to the practical aspects of training and communication, we aim to highlight the importance of horse-human relationships. Join us as we share stories, insights, and expert interviews that illuminate the deep understanding and mutual respect between these four-legged creatures and the two-leggeds who love them. Whether you're a horse owner, an enthusiast, or simply curious about the fascinating connection, you are invited to listen in and discover the many ways horses enrich our lives. Thanks to Kim McElroy, I had the chance to interview Sandra Wallin, who is the co-creator of the Council of Horses Oracle, a 40-card deck and guidebook. Sandra has been learning from horses in one way or another her entire life. It wasn't until her horses Grace and Chiron arrived that her apprenticeship truly began. Sandra claims Grace has taught her to be a better person, and Chiron is teaching her how to be a better horse. And as she learns, so she teaches in her Equine Guided Programs at Chiron's Way in British Columbia, Canada. Sandra is a registered clinical counselor, educator, and presenter who, having retired 22 years at a local school district, divides her professional time between private practice and leading equine guided programs locally and internationally. This interview was just so incredible. I got to speak to Sandra more about the Council of Horses Oracle, deck of cards and guidebook, which is now available. And we just talked about all sorts of things that just blows me away. So I really hope you appreciate this as well. Enjoy. Sandra, thank you so much for joining me and agreeing to talk with me. It's just incredible. Like I got to talk with Kim, your cohort and colleague, and I had, the same with this is my nature. So let's get rolling right now. So
let's get going.
I wanted, that Chiron's Way, your organization and your offering to the world, which we're gonna ask. I have a bunch of questions, but why are horses so good at picking out our wounds?
Oh. Well, let's talk about Chiron.
Okay, great.
He's my mentor, even though he's a myth, right, in a way. And he was the wounded healer. And I love the quote by Rumi, who talks about that the wound is the place where the light enters us. And I think horses, I'm getting goosebumps, I think horses bring light into our lives. And I think that they exude, emit, embody that, as do we. And I there's something about the majesty and the miraculousness of our relationships and how they've evolved over millennia. Some people would say even beyond that, out beyond the stars, where the relationship began, the origin story of that. And there's even actually a part of that in the guidebook that talks about, in the Council of Horses guidebook, that talks about how horses and humanity agreed to travel throughout the stars, essentially, and to bring high-level consciousness and frequency to different places in the universe. And on the journey between there and here, what I was shown was like the dandelion flower, when it goes to seed and the wind blows and how it lifts off those seeds and it carries those little umbrellas out on the winds. That our consciousness was in one of those seeds and horse consciousness, equine consciousness, was in another. And between there and here on the celestial winds, we kind of got jostled about a little bit and forgot what that divine or that sacred contract, that original purpose was. But horses remembered, pardon me. And I think that in their remembering and in our forgetting is a pardon me, a weaving together of a tapestry in a way. And in a number of those threads are those healing threads, and in their agreement to help us in recapture, to remember that evolutionary vow I think that's part of the reasons why horses are so profound in terms of the human condition, in terms of helping us evolve, ascend, heal, live our everyday lives in terms of practical matters, but also deeply support us in spiritual relationships and endeavors as well.
Beautiful. Yeah, beautiful. Yes. It's incredible. I mean, so welcome to the Centaur podcast, and Marianne Simons helped me with that name. It is such a, that myth.
It's a great.
Well, the myth is so alive, and it's even in your I think one of your blogs I read, it's the collective wound that Chiron was representing. It's not the individual wound. And people get that. I think that we all have the wound. Just like pony up, get on board. We all got it. Just what degree and how you deal with it, I think, is right. Is that how you see it? But that before, I also appreciate Rumi's quote. But because I study some of the Stoics. I'm not a Stoic, but I studied them, and because I always think of the horses. They have a Stoic nature to them, and I fantasize that the early Stoics studied the horses to develop their philosophy. Like, so Marcus Aurelius, one of the famous, the dude, Roman Empire, who really one of the most well-known Stoics. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way.
That's beautiful.
Like Ryan Holiday's.
I love that.
Right.
That's kind of like Antonio Machado talks about the pathmaker. There is no path. You make the path by walking. By walking, you make the path. It's a different way of saying that we make the way, and that's part of what Chiron's way. The name of that just sort of dropped into my head. I was actually attending a workshop by Linda Kohanov when back in the ancient days when there really wasn't a lot about the work that we're doing, Cameron, equine guided wellness and learning and therapy and leadership. And Linda's book had just come out. And interestingly enough, I was walking in a local bookstore here and a book fell off the shelf in front of me. And I picked it up and I looked and it was this, I've got it right here. It was this beautiful blue covered book with this black horse running across it. Oh, look at that. It's amazing. The Tao of Equus. What an incredible name. And the photograph was mesmerizing. And it was hardcover. And, I like to read in the tub and in bed. It's like, holding up that hardcover book's really heavy. I'll just wait until it comes out in softcover. And then a couple weeks later, the NARA conference, which was the North American Riding for the Handicapped Association back in those days. Now it's PATH, right. Which you know.
I'm a PATH. Yeah, PATH, right?
I know you are. I know.
But yeah.
And I attended, it was down in Seattle, and there just weren't a lot of things around in the late 90s about this beautiful field. And I noticed on the agenda, there was someone who I didn't know who it was, but she was speaking about equine assisted learning, they called it at the time. And I thought, well, I'm going to just go to this conference, even if I just get to hear a couple of speakers and hear what that is all about, what their take on it is. And I went and stepped into the lecture hall, and there up on the screen was the cover of the Tao of Equus. So it was Linda. There she was. The book fell off the shelf in front of me a few weeks earlier, and now I was attending this lecture. And I said to my friend that I was there with, I said, I just have a feeling that I'm going to find the name of my business here this weekend because there's going to be so much related to horses. And I'd always been drawn by the centaurs, just like you have. But the history tells us that they were quite unruly creatures much of the time.
They didn't know where they belonged.
No,
so they were
this hybrid, like, am I here or am I here? Yeah. And the beautiful thing about Chiron, and in the card that I wrote about him, is that we become more than the sum of our parts, that Apollo, his teacher, helped him rise above what would have been considered his beastly nature to ascend into these echelons and these spheres of healing, of wellness. But it was through his own wounding that he receded into the cave in Mount Pelion, where he then became the father of alternative medicine. I mean, goodness sakes. And he was the teacher of heroes. He was the mentor of original medicines that came forward into the world, an ecologist. He was a polymath beyond anything. Mm-hmm. And so to be able to kind of have my spidey senses on in a way. And Linda started to speak, as she so beautifully does, about the different storylines and histories around horses and human, the horse-human connection. And she mentioned Chiron. And as soon as she said that, whew, Chiron's way just popped right into my head. And it felt so perfect, because for me, through my own woundings, which, as you were saying, we all have, and interestingly enough, a basketball injury that tore up my knee, and it never really did seem to heal. It just changed the trajectory of my life. What I thought I was going to be doing in terms of having a scholarship, that changed, and I had to move directions and re-navigate and rebalance, reorient. I very much resonated with Chiron's myth, and also his mother, his Lyra was tracked down, right? She changed herself into a mare to escape the attentions of a Titan god, and he in turn changed himself into a stallion and chased her down. And she became pregnant, and when she gave birth to this half man, half horse, what she felt was an abomination. And she cast him out, and then of course Apollo adopted him. And in my own life, my birth mother was raped, and I was put up for adoption. So there were these really profound. Once I started to really dive into Chiron's myth in a deep way, profound synchronicities and relevances that there was this overlap. And then, of course, my business needs to be named Chiron's Way.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And
You're welcome.
it is. I didn't know. I read the. I didn't know that about your history. This is. I really want to talk a lot about these cards. And the same with Kim. I have so many questions. And your writing.
For sure.
Your writing is so beautiful too. I get so
Thank
much.
you.
I told Kim I was drawn to the cards first.
We're visual first, right? And we see things
Yeah.
first.
So I just sucked the cards up real quickly. It's the guidebook that's really really pushing me. And one of the questions, by the way, Chiron has, Chiron is finding wisdom in the wound. I'll share this on YouTube. I just love this card. It's so it depicts.
Isn't it beautiful?
Yeah, you guys did such incredible, both of you, because it was a collaborative effort. But one of Chiron's in the guidebook, one of the questions, Chiron, you pose through the first. This is so beautiful about these cards. It's in the first person. I mean, the horse perspective in the story, and then the questions are, kind of directed to us. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, you did great.
Okay,
That's exactly right. The first, Kim and I tease that first person, first horse. Because I would say sometimes people ask if I'll come and speak about being a horse listener, and I'll say, a horse whisperer.
Yeah, right.
It's actually horse listening.
Exactly.
Horse listening. And so when we listen, then we can convey, and all of the stories that the horses share, we're pretty much, when we're tuning into the quantum field and tapping in. I mean, obviously we share our lives with some of the horses that are in the deck, but some of the horses are non-local. And our myths and stories themselves. Yeah. So very much you're spot on when you're talking about first person storytelling from the horses, straight from the horse's mouth.
Yes, right. So one of the questions Chiron had is, when have you been cast out for your beliefs, behaviors, and opinions? And so before you answer that, I want to thank you, because, I'm coming on the scene kind of, late game. You've been doing this a long time, you and Kim and Linda, and I thank you for really leading the way and paving the way for people like me to come along. I've been like 11 years now, dabbling, but really jumping in now full force, because
good for you.
Yeah, it's just so important, and it's just like you, it just keeps giving back, to things that, but it's even in my little bubble, it's challenging. I have to defend myself a lot. Seriously, it's kind of weird, but I'm only imagining what you had to go. Again, it'd be four path. It was Nara, right?
Nara, and then and EFMA, the Equine Facilitated Mental Health Association. So they were sister organizations, and Barbara Rector and Boo McDaniels, who are just beautiful sage women, elder mares, lead mares in our field. They were, and Alden, they were really in that mental health stream. And then there was the therapeutic riding stream. Over the years, the two merged and became Path. But for sure, they were those, if you think about an icebreaker, they were at the leading edge of that. So even us further down the way has been open for us in a large way because of those incredible pioneers. But even as I say that, that's not the right word, because we have been learning from and living with the company of horses for millennia, the Bedouin people, the First Nations people. So when we think about the history of the relationship with horses, even going back to the Knights Templar, the original foundation of the Spanish riding school, that really are looking at those roots, the origin story of the horse-human relationship. It's been around for a long time, but now we're reformulating, or maybe we're relanguaging it, because we've become even more disconnected from the natural world than we were even then. So therefore, even more important for any opportunity to spend time in nature, and in particular with these incredible ambassadors for health, well-being, life.
Yeah. I saw that you worked in the public schools in Vancouver, right? Public school counselor. But I mean, that's
both. Yeah, I started off as a teacher, and then I went back to school and became a school counselor as well. So I would do a bit of both, actually, in the last few years that I was there.
So, again, thank you for all. I made it, I think, 2 years. It was not my journey. I did this late in life too. But again, I have to ask, because I don't follow the traditional kind of educational practices. Is there any?
Nor did I.
Yeah, exactly. So can you just think of one thing where you've been cast out for your beliefs or your opinions, and you had to hold tight, hold tight.
I don't know that I've ever been, and maybe it's just my perspective, I don't know that I've ever been cast out as a more raising eyebrows.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
In a way, since you mentioned the school district, I worked in a beautiful school district, actually the one that I grew up in. So it was really, I knew the area, the environment, the sort of the community very well. And when I started working at the school, where I started to bring equine guided well-being into the schools, it was the first, as far as to my knowledge, the first equine assisted learning program in Canada.
Wow.
But at that time, I had been a teacher. So I was 22 years I was in the school district. And so that would have been maybe the last 10 years of my career. And I worked with an administrator who won the Order of Canada for education, very forward thinking, very inclusive, and embodying of the whole learning environment. And she was really great. She opened a new school, and she got to handpick her staff. And I was fortunate enough to have been chosen to be part of that staff. An amazing, incredible a herd of people, just incredible. And sometimes we think about it as our Camelot years, that sometimes in your career you land in an environment with a group of colleagues and friends. It's never going to be that way ever again. So those years were incredibly potent in my own learning journey as a teacher and as a counselor, but just about how to be in the world. And so she would always pretty much give me carte blanche on anything that I wanted to do, because I had built a level of respect and trust, and people knew, oh, Sandra's interested in that. There's got to be something to it. So it never felt like that I was, kind of, sometimes I would maybe be going against the flow, which is the contrary card. I don't know if you've read that. I loved writing the contrary card, because we need someone in First Nations traditions. They always delegate someone who dances around the fire in the opposite direction of everybody else. And I think that was probably maybe the reason I relate to that.
Okay.
Card was a bit of me in there for sure. And so Maureen gave me, because I always wanted, actually wanted to be a veterinarian. I wanted to be Dr. Dolittle when I grew up, but organic chemistry, haha, another detour, which always ends up, hindsight gives us that perfect 2020 understanding why things happened the way they did, even though in the throes of it, we might not quite be in agreement with the change of direction. So I was really lucky to land in this, unfortunate maybe, or maybe the belief that I will always end up in the right place at the right time. Pretty much is my MO. Just like being here speaking with you feels like it's just in the right place at the right time. And even the cards, how they were told no, 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 no. We were kindly and lovingly, and they publishers would say how beautiful they were, but they weren't quite in their wheelhouse, still kind of believing in there that the horses were going to land us in the right stable, so to speak, that we'd end up being in the right place. So back to the school conversation, always wanted to have animals in my life. And then the idea of, well, if I'm not going to work with them in a more medical, traditional veterinary perspective. And I did work at an animal hospital from when I was 12 till 22. So I thought, this is for sure going to be my path. Change direction, kind of like Chiron, the wound, find the wisdom in that, and then be able to navigate a new way forward. So teaching was just beautiful. I loved it. I love science. And so to be able to teach science, and then again, no, I'm sorry, this program's full. So now instead of teaching high school, I went into the elementary path, which was such a blessing, because I think I would have been completely bored teaching, science 5 periods a day. It would have driven me crazy. So being in the middle school environment was perfect for me, because my mind is always engaged and active, and I was teaching and learning with the students multiple things all the time. And one of those things, of course, then became, how can I somehow bring nature into the classroom and bring the students out into nature? And so nature's classroom, which is where I learned the most when I was young and still do, it just made so much sense to be able to bring the students outside. And then beyond that, I had this really interesting meeting and encounter. I was fascinated with equine assisted learning. Again, nothing was really happening. The field was just starting to bring its little shoot above ground.
Like roughly like 1990.
End of the 1990s, mid 1990, end of the 1990s. Yeah. And there was an organization here called the Pegasus Foundation, interestingly enough. And they had brought a horse whisperer out, and I saw it in the local paper, which again, I don't read the local paper. So suddenly I'm looking at the paper, and there's this guy that's coming and doing horse whispering stuff. I thought, well, I'm gonna go to that. So I went to that, and I met the woman who ran the foundation, Lori Geske, and her daughter was a teenager at the time and had been given the diagnosis of being on the spectrum. And so the Pegasus Foundation was really about bringing horses and supporting kids with autism in terms of how they can, be present in the world in a different way, be supported. And she was a real strong advocate. When the Pegasus Foundation folded, which was not long after that, she contacted my school district and said, I would like to leave all of the funds that are in our coffers earmarked for Sandra to do equine assisted learning within your school district. And of course, our superintendent, who knew me and actually approved me when I first came into the district, we had a long history together. He said, of course, yes, right away. And so those funds came to support transportation, et cetera, and paying for the facility. I didn't have my own horses at that time. So again, sleuthing about what's close by. Lovely woman in the town next to us had horses. And so just daring greatly to follow Brené Brown. Yep. And I went out and made some contact, and she said, please, yes, bring the students out. That would be amazing. And that's kind of where it began in the school district. And then I said to my husband, I can't keep doing this outside of here. We have to find property. We have to find, because my lifelong dream always, Cameron, was to have my own horses. And we just couldn't afford that. growing up. I always found a way to be around them, but they weren't my horses, and I wasn't their person. And so Greg agreed, and we started to look for property. And where we are now, actually, we have a beautiful 5-acre property in this little town called Maple Ridge. And so all these, the little dominoes, when you tip one over, and then it opens out and shows a new path, like we were talking about earlier. So that's where it started, to be able to then, okay, now instead of working within the school district, to become my own business and start my own private practice. I'd gone back to school to become a psychotherapist and got my master's degree. And beautifully, the school district paid for me to go and do that. Another incredible way of the universe or the environment supporting me in following those dreams. And then Chiron's Way came to be here. So working in the schools and having a private practice, but then it still took us a couple of years to get the property ready to be able to bring horses. And that was they came in 2005. Grace, my mare who's in here. And that's when and Linda, I think 2 weeks after Grace arrived and we had built the shelter and had the paddocks put in, Linda came and she was teaching a workshop here called Chiron's Way, the Art of the Wounded Healer. She was so kind to name it after my business. And then that's how Kim and I met. Kim came to that workshop as well. So a beautiful kind of maybe a long-winded story related to your first question. And that'll happen.
Yeah.
It's a risk talking to me, Cameron, because I'll just
You're
go
passionate.
on.
You're passionate. And Kim also touched upon that, how the Council of Horses Oracle, this beautiful deck of cards, which is my daily practice. Here it is it actually that the seed was planted before the Tao of the Way, or what was the other card deck that was
Way of the Horse.
Way of the Horse, excuse me. Yeah, so I mean, this was a long project.
A long time coming.
Yeah, this is like a lot of years. Really,
It's just stating a long time.
A lot of what a great partner to work with. But I have to ask about Grace, because I did pull that card yesterday. I try to each day I have, it's part of my practice, and I'm asking the horses the horses I work with to getting them the opportunity to pick cards, which is so much fun. But we have a lot of common. I was teaching middle school.
I love middle school.
Yeah, I same here. I was like, people were like, that must have been horrifying and terrible. It was no, the kids were great. It was the structure I was having trouble with. But the other thing is that's where I learned where some reason kids on the spectrum and I got along, for whatever reason that is. I still don't know. But it sounds like you've done a lot of work with a lot of kids, along with. I mean, again, from your bio, so Chiron's Way is now your dedicated business, but you've got, you've worked with students as young as middle school. You work with corporate executives. I saw somewhere you've been to a local prison, working with, so you're doing the work. So again, thank you for that. But so Chiron's Way,
pleasure.
Yeah, Chiron's Way has got so much to offer. I mean, but so between from your website, from the retreats to the one-on-one, what is it that kind of you think is and the conscious horsemanship? What do you think? What are people? What are there's so much, I think so much need right now. What are people most coming to you for right now? More than anything?
People are most coming to me now for belief change. The biology belief work with Bruce Lipton, based on Bruce Lipton's work, psychology of change, psychological kinesiology, and the conscious horsemanship, sort of bringing that into the equine community, helping people realize that, our relationship with horses has more to do with us than we might first give credence to. So I would say those things tend to be where I'm teaching the most. I have a private practice, but right now I'm traveling and teaching so much that I only have a small number of days per month that I open, and they fill up pretty quickly. So there's a need there, but at the same time, what I'm doing now is referring out to my colleagues and graduates, because I just can't keep up with the number of people that are looking for that level of support. And it's very much I love it. It's what I taught in the prison, actually, was the belief change methodology to help the men there that are serving life sentences how to literally free themselves from the confines of those beliefs. And that came at the request of Dr. Bruce Lipton, who's become a dear friend of mine over the years. And if you're not familiar with his work, the biology belief is precedent setting. If you want to talk about sort of the groundbreaking type of making a new way, his research showed, stem cell research showed that the environment actually influenced what the cells became. So he took identical stem cells, put them in 3 different agar dishes, 3 different environments of petri dishes with different medium, and one turned into bone, one turned into cardiac tissue, and one turned into fat, I believe. I can't remember the exact 3 right now. And so this kind of completely flew in the face of the central dogma, which we're still teaching in schools, that genes are the brains of the cell. It's actually not. It's the environment. It's the cell membrane and how we perceive our environment. So the idea of perception is so profound. And horses they help us perceive, they help us see the world differently. If we stand beside a horse and look out at the world through the eyes of a horse, our vision completely, what we see, what we engage with, is enhanced in a completely different way. When I would work with the students, so we would talk about tiger vision, because there's times where we need to be focused and honing in on something. Like when your teacher's speaking with you, that's a really good time for you to hone in your tiger vision. And then there's other times where that horse vision is so helpful, where we can see the wide view, expand our perspectives and our perceptions, use our socio-sensual awareness, and to be able to then, as humans, we have this beautiful ability to change the focal length on our lens. So sometimes we'll zoom in and be focusing in, and other times we'll be more outward with that wider perspective. And I think that's a real gift that we have. So the Chiron's Way part, I just feel so blessed to get to do the work I do. And David White, who's one of my favorite writers, he talks about work is the place where our soul or our spirit meets the world. Isn't that the best definition you've ever heard?
Oh my God, yeah, I like him
too. And so
too.
if we get to do work like, oh, you do? Well, of course
God,
you do,
yeah.
Cameron. I mean, we just seem to have so many things that we love and we in common with each other.
I don't know what it is. With the experiential learning. I still don't know what to call myself. By the way, I do like I like your belief builder. I saw that on your website. This work that Lipton's talking about. I know a little bit about it, but thank you for describing it more. But yeah, I think this is why it's me, my opinion, and why everybody's this is just taking off, is that this idea of consciousness, right?
Yeah.
We're really it's really being challenged. What is consciousness? And that's, where the horses tie us right into that, because they have the whole herd thing built in with their own consciousness. So Grace, I have to ask about Grace, because I did read in the intro that when you were working on this card deck, that Council of Horses Oracle card deck, I told Kim, these are not cards, but let's just use that word because there's nothing else to use.
Yeah.
Because when you say cards, I went into, I won't go into it today, but so Grace.
Grace.
So Grace is you lost, what's the word?
She died.
She died. Say it, Cam. So she died.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it?
She moved on. I know. Even I struggle. I don't know anybody who does grief well, but this was you were. Grace
did grief well.
Did she?
Yeah, she was a master at holding space for people that were grieving.
So I want to hear about her story a little bit, and also because I saw a photo of this young girl. It's not you. I thought it might be you. There's a girl on the website, your blog. Is that you? No.
No, that's
Yeah.
it's a young girl that came to work with Grace.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you didn't meet her until you're in your what
I met Grace when
midlife.
I was probably, I guess it would have been 38 or 39. Linda asked if I'd come. She was teaching a Power of Authenticity workshop down near Seattle.
Yeah.
And because I live up here, not far away, she said, "Would you like to come and help co-facilitate?" And I said, "I'd love to, thank you." And it was at a woman's farm, Peggy Gilmer's farm, just south of Seattle. And Peggy had Tennessee walking horses, and I'd never been around walkers before. And I borrowed my husband's parents' camper van and camped out on the property. So it was really amazing, Cameron, because I got to pull the camper van in behind the barn, and I got to sleep with the windows open, and I could hear the horses, moving through the night and eating their hay, and could have all the incredible smells and sort of sleep with the horses essentially and it was magical. And that's where I met Grace for the first time. But it was really her daughter, Savannah, that captivated my heart. Linda made me do a dancing with horses exercise, and it was with Savannah. She used me as the demo, shy, introverted me. She throws me out in the center of things, and it was really beautiful. And I got to dance with Savannah, and I had this lovely relationship with her. And at night, I'd kind of lean over and whisper to her and talk with her and listen, and it was beautiful. And Grace was her mom. And so when we were bringing horses in to do the exercises with all of the participants, what I noticed was when people would go out to get Grace, she would never let herself be caught. She always kind of looked a little bit scowly. And I thought, oh, all right, not necessarily the kind of horse that I thought would be great at this work. She didn't light me up in a way. And so I just noticed that where my attention was drawn, it was not to Grace. And then a number of months later, when the property was getting ready for horses, and I had thought that I had found what would be my first horse. Her name was Wisdom. And this is another beautiful story. She was part of the herd with Susan Elliott, and she had Feather Dance Ranch, and that's out in Minnesota. And her dream horse, her love horse, was Gibraltar, and he was actually in the movie Lady Hawk. I don't know if you ever saw that movie, that big, massive Frisian stallion that Rutger Hauer is riding.
Yeah.
Oh, please, my heart be still for both of them.
Right.
And so I met Susan, and I was going out to teach a workshop out there with the horses, and she introduced me to this mare, this beautiful mare, white Trakehner mare named Wisdom. And Wisdom, we made an agreement that Wisdom would come home and be my first very own precious horse. And she had just had a baby. And so after he was weaned, Susan was going to bring Wisdom out, but I was going to meet her in person for the first time when I went out to teach. So this was a few months down the road, and she ended up passing away, actually. And so I was a little bit heartbroken, and I was back down at Peggy's near Seattle, and Peggy said, "Well, what are you going to do about a horse?" And I said, "I don't know." I said, "Well, what about Savannah?" And she said, "No, but what about Grace?" And I went, "Grace?" Grace.
I love that look. The people listening to Sandra just kind of like grimaced there. It's like, are you kidding me?
I said, "You do know what I want to do, right? I only have room for a couple of horses, and I'm working with children.
Yeah.
Like the horse that needs to like people, and she doesn't even look like she likes people." And she goes, "Well, let's just go out into the field and visit her." And I kind of went, "Well, why? I don't know what the point is, but okay, let's go." So we did. And Grace was the lead mare of a herd of about 8. And she left the herd and she walked right up to me and she put her head right in my heart.
Mm.
And I was still so resistant. Like I felt it, but I was also in like, no. There was part of me that received it and part of me that turned it away because of what I had seen, and also kind of my dream was, well, I want the I want to have what I thought were the dream horses. I thought I would choose the dream horses, even though I know better than that. I know horses pick us, but
Right.
I wasn't prepared or ready or whatever the word would be to be chosen by Grace. So Peggy said, well, just think about it. Just think about it. So I went home, and then a few months later, my sister and I were going back down to go see Cavalia. It was just outside of Seattle. And Peggy's going, well, you should come and see Grace again. Okay, well, I'll bring my sister down, and trust, animals own my sister. They completely, so she has no boundaries whatsoever. Our lab used to, literally go in the middle of the night and get her to get up and take him out and stuff. Whereas when Greg and I, he would sleep in with us till noon kind of thing. So all animals own Lisa. So I thought, okay, if I'm going to see how this mare is with Lisa, because Lisa would be a really good sort of beta test for how she would be with kids and people that don't know anything about horses. Well, she was miraculous. Peggy had her under saddle, Lisa rode her, and would just look to where she was going, and Grace would, she was just amazing. She would just move and follow, and so elegant and so deeply connected. And she would keep looking at me and going, yeah, really not quite seeing you now, not quite really ready for that yet. And then when we got there, Peggy said, oh, I knew you were coming. And I said, well, I know you knew we were coming. We said I'd be here about 2:00. She goes, no, I knew you were coming, because Grace left the herd, and she walked up to the fence and was looking over the fence waiting for you to come. So there were all these signs, Cameron, and I just was not ready. For whatever reason, maybe for the deep, maybe in my heart, I'm going to cry actually, maybe in the depth of my heart, I wasn't ready for that big of a love. So when I finally said yes to her, and she was so patient in the waiting of that, we brought her here, and my life has never been the same. When she stepped off the trailer, I remember shouting back up to the house, she's here. It's in the card. Yep. She's here. Grace is here. And I leapt out of the house, and I ran down onto the grass, and my husband says, you're so excited. And I know, it's my dream come true. And Greg goes, I thought I was your dream come true.
Of course.
And I said, I've been dreaming about horses long before.
Yeah, right.
Before this, before you, before boys, before men, before whatever, before anything else, I've been dreaming about horses. And to have this beautiful mare choose me and wait for me to finally agree and say yes to her was a story. Actually, there's a beautiful little book called Horse's Teacher. There's two of them. Horse's Teacher, The Path to Authenticity, and The Path to I just had my Path to Relationship, and I wrote a chapter in the Path to Relationship about Grace, and it's all this story that we're just talking about here.
I'll check that
So
out.
Grace was the first horse who came to be here, and 2 weeks after she arrived was when Linda came, and she is masterful beyond any comprehension. She holds space for children on the spectrum. She kicks leaders in the butt when they pretend that I own this, I communicate authentically. And she's like, actually, this is how it's done. So she taught me so much about what to do and what not to do. And she held master classes every time workshops were happening here, and in private sessions, she completely embodied her namesake, which would be Grace. And so the card was the last card I wrote, because she passed away in June 2002.
2022.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Like I'm not even whole brain right now.
Okay.
I'm feeling
it's a lot.
All emotional. Yeah. And I couldn't think about it. I couldn't think about her. I couldn't write about her. It was just too painful. And then all the cards are now done except Grace. And I partly left it to the end because I knew I wanted to have the space to really be present, because I figured if I got in touch with that, it might influence it, so, how the other cards were coming to life. So I thought, no, I'm going to, and also it was complete procrastination and avoidance, because then I would really have to feel
Yeah.
deeply and completely this loss. So the card is our story, but part of it, because what I recognize when I sat down to write her card, there could be books and decks just about Grace and just the things that she's taught me, but that she's taught the people who have come, and that she's taught other horses. She's just this lead mare in every sense of the word. And so
It's incredible hearing you talk.
Big.
I got teary yesterday when I picked the card and read this. So I mean, I could feel it just by reading your guidebook. So Grace, there she is, when hearts become whole, and she is gorgeous. And so the word I was struggling with when I was saying she died, she transitioned, and that's what this is the gift of these cards, is these are alive. So Grace's spirit is carried on, and I never would have met her unless you made these card decks, this card and this guidebook. Yeah, so now I know her.
Thank you for saying that.
Yes,
I love that, because her work was so deep and big and profound, and I'm touched and delighted that she is alive in her sharing of all of her gifts through these wisdom cards. It's so touching. And I had a number of friends and people that knew her over the years, and when they got the deck, a number of them would email or write or phone and tell me that they had drawn the Grace card. And so I love that she's in here, and I love all of the horses that are in here.
Incredible.
But everything for me starts and ends with her.
And how lucky to have that relationship. But so I have this guy, Hunter. I think I sent you a photo. And I've only known him a year now, but he's just taking me to new places. Just kind of like, it sounds like Grace. He's got a much bigger plan than I do. So I just like, okay.
Oh, yes.
So I have to kind of keep on my toes. But I call him my lead faculty member. And it sounds like Grace
that's great.
Grace was she was the one who taught all your other horses. Did she teach?
She's the dean.
She's the dean. It's an honorary dean. She had everything. These are like they're out there, and so I got to one.
They are.
He's teaching the minis right now. I work with the 3 minis as well. He works with everyone and very just tolerant of everything. But exactly, he calls it out as it is,
True.
That is the beauty.
Truth tellers.
So Kim is also your faculty, and so working with Kim, I can only imagine you guys I'm getting a little bit of a sense of how you complement each other. But you got in the guidebook, it says you actually were part of 2 of the paintings.
I did.
Anabar, which is behind you. I can see it on your wall. Anabar and Ambassador. How I mean, co-collaborating writing. I've done that, but co-collaborating how did you do that?
Well, Kim did the lion's share of the art, and I did the lion's share of the writing. And then there were places where, like a Venn diagram, where we would overlap, And what was always common there was a profound love and deep love for horses and all the things that they shared and taught with each of us in our lives. And then our unique, what we have that was unique unto ourselves, but also the shared places. And I think that was, it was born of respect and deep friendship and for each other. And then the dream of being able to share in a beautiful way, because I think one of the things that we mentioned before was that I'm an art therapist and Kim's an artist, and so how are those the same, and how How are they different? And to be able to, both of us, be completely compelled and moved by beauty. And how could there be, I mean, people might argue against this, but I think one of the most beautiful things to gaze upon is our horses.
Mm-hmm. It's in our DNA. As Kim and I talked about, they're on the cave art, from
Lascaux.
So we know that's been in our psyche for this. But so did you actually physically draw some of these? She does mosaics, right? She does not mosaics, pastels.
She does pastels. So Enbar was, this is actually, the stand-in this is Chiron, my horse Chiron, who is a lifter of veils. He's very much the fairy horse. And he's a bit of an astral traveler. He's out and about doing things. And people will come here and say, "Oh my gosh, I've been dreaming about that horse for 5 months," or "I've been dreaming about that horse for 2 years." So it's amazing. He's kind of Grace, a little more grounded, like Gaia, embodying sort of Mother Nature. Chiron more up into the air of things. And so this was a painting. Actually, Kim was here, I don't remember what year it was, and we thought, well, we would just do some painting together. So she worked on a painting, and then I worked on this one, did this one. And
beautiful. So this is
thank you.
It's sitting behind her on your office. Here's the card here, Anna Barr lifting the veil, and it's just as like a kind of a gray horse. This you can see the horse's head, and kind of just coming through
the mist.
The veil. Yeah. So yeah, it's just Hunter, by the way, picked this card.
Oh, well, I'm not, because when I saw Hunter, I thought, oh, he looks like Chiron.
So what I do is I put them in a circle, and he just came over, put his nose on it, and walked away. That's
I love that.
But so,
I love that you're doing that with Hunter and Romeo and your herd. I think that's beautiful.
So you had a canvas somewhere, and you just kind of came to. It wasn't a photo. It was just a.
No, this was based on a photo that I had of Chiron.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and then the ambassador. That's the only painting in the deck that's done in acrylics. I did that one in acrylic, and
it's also
that's
beautiful.
Based on that's Sutter, and
Sutter.
he's this.
Yeah, I want to hear
Sutter.
the story. I want to hear the story of Sutter, because this is the interesting thing about this deck of cards is that some have been in physical bodies and some have not, and
It's
so
true.
You're really, like, again, you're putting these two. There's the veil right there. You're putting these two worlds, letting us access these two worlds. But
That's
Sutter,
a great way to frame it.
Sutter was a rescue, and pretty tragic. What happened? How was his story? How was his story?
Very tragic in the beginning. Very tragic. I don't know. You have the deck. You have the card there. Do you want to read from it a little bit?
Yes.
Cameron? Why don't you go ahead?
Good idea. This is what Kim did. So, ambassador, invincibility of spirit, resilience, trans-species healing, radical forgiveness, message for humankind. Even each of this. So this is the guidebook. Each card has a format like this. So that for ambassador, the message for humankind. Even in the darkest of places, love can be the light. And then the message for horsekind, out of suffering, the strongest souls emerge. And then you have this beautiful written first person story from Ambassador or Sutter. My story: I was still growing into my legs when I was abducted from my wild home and family, one of more than 100,000 horses marked for slaughter each year. Fate intervened, and I was relocated to a place where barbarism reigned. Too young to make sense of the cruelty, I withered from neglect and torture. Laid out in the scorching sun, I was bound and tied with a black tarp placed over me. My mind fractured, riven by fear. I was branded incorrigible. Is that right? Incorrigible, dangerous, and returned to my original abductors. But once again, fate intervened. I was rescued from exile and taken to a new home. Were you the person who rescued me?
No. her name is out of my head now. The original woman that rescued him, and then he went to Netta de Mayo at Return to Freedom. So there was one woman in between, and I'm so apologetic that her name isn't in my head right now. I'll have to get back to you about that. But
That's okay.
he became adopted by Netta, and the part there, I think the next part talks about how when he went to this intermediary place, he was met with love and the laughter of children, and how his spirit came back into his body. Because, I mean, if you think about the kind of abuse that he went through, that some of us go through.
You become branded as, like you can't get near that horse because again, their minds are fractured. They are so out of their mind. But yeah, so this is, again, how did he make it into the deck? Did you actually physically meet him?
Because I knew him.
You did? So okay. That's what I wanted to hear. How did you get to know him?
When I went to Return to Freedom, I went there. I had a profound riding accident, which is another conversation, on Chiron. And a few weeks later, I had booked in to go to this photography workshop at Return to Freedom, which is the wild horse sanctuary down in Lompoc, California, near Santa Barbara. They now have another in San Luis Obispo, further north in California. So they have thousands of acres up there. The one in Lompoc, I believe, is a couple hundred acres. So they're rescuing wild horses, bringing the horses of the Bureau of Land Management down in your United States. They round up horses with helicopters and they bring them into these pens, and many of them are hurt or injured or wither, and a lot of them are then adopted out, and a lot of them are sent to Mexico and Canada for slaughter, and PMU, previously for pregnant mare urine for women. So these atrocities that are happening to horses, Sutter was in one of those roundups, and he was a young horse at that time, young stallion. And so when he got to Return to Freedom, after he had been again at this beautiful stepping stone place in between, he got to grow and thrive. And he actually, the reason that I called the card Ambassador was he won the SPCA's Ambassador Animal of the Year award a few years ago. And so he became a spokesperson, so to speak, for the good work of the horse-human relationship and what was happening at Return to Freedom. Also at Return to Freedom is Spirit, the Kiger Mustang that is based, the movie Spirit, the Disney movie Spirit is based on. So Spirit lives there as well. So I met him at this photography workshop and fell head over heels in love. Truly, he was his presence. He was just so magnificent in terms of his beauty, but I could just feel his heart. And then I went back and taught a couple of workshops there, and would always make sure that we would have time with Sutter. And Netta was kind enough to be able to allow us to have encounters with him, which was so beautiful. And Netta called him Sutter Butter because he just kind of melted her heart and melted your heart. So he captivated me, and his story captivated me. And I really wanted to make sure that in the deck, those types of, as painful as they are, at least in the beginning of the card, it starts in that pain place. And then by the end of the card, it's letting us know kind of a resurrection of the spirit, and how we can rise above. And his message, I don't know if you've got the card there, maybe I can just grab it here.
Last sentence is, I am evidence of a risen life and proof that cruelty can be healed with love. But then you have the contemplations. Well, then you have the counsel from the ambassador, then the contemplations, which I love, and then the initiative. Is that what you meant? The invitation? The invitation?
Yeah. The invitation is literally that. It's sometimes, all of this information is beautiful and the story is incredible, and I resonate with the counsel. And now what do I do?
Exactly. I love these challenges. I mean, and that's what I think is so brilliant about this. This is for anybody, you don't have to be a horse person.
Not at all.
You don't have to be own a horse, ride a horse. This is so the invitation is from Ambassador: offer your compassionate and mindful assistance to the world in a way that is also meaningful for you. And there he is. He's living his best life right now. He should be dead. So it's incredible.
He's just one of the 40 incredible teachers and masters and healers and wisdom keepers that are in the deck that we got to bring to life in this way. And I just love that you said too that these can be available for everyone, because I think it would be rare to find someone who didn't at least notice a horse out of the corner of their eye, in some way, like there's an attractor factor there, and we don't, and yes, for sure related to the beauty of the horses, but I think it goes much deeper than that. And I think it ties into what I was even saying about Grace, that like, if we open ourselves to that, then transformation awaits. And not all of us are ready for that. So I will say that the horses in this herd, some of them are very patient and kind, and they'll put their head over us and they'll hold us tenderly. And then there'll be other horses in here that'll give us a little push or a little nudge, perhaps. If we've gotten off track, they'll bring us a little bit around into the right direction. And I love that because when I would work with the children, work with the students, what was so great about having the horses there as part of the tableau was when we speak about something sometimes in third person, it makes it safer to have that conversation. So they can look at a herd of horses and then they can say, oh, well, I really notice how that horse seems to always be standing by himself. And then now we can talk about that horse in third person and have this therapeutic conversation about what this experience might be and how this horse might be able to work through. So it helps to externalize and yet internalize at the same time a healing story, which is it's often so gentle now. Like, oh, I can talk about what's happening in the horse's life, but I don't have to be sharing that that's really what's happening in my life. And then the relationship and the rapport builds, and now the conversation ends up being about, well, I know what that's like for him because I stand outside by myself on the playground all the time.
I never get bored. It's so friggin' fun.
No.
I love this stuff, and I love talking to you about it. And I can talk to you so much more. And I want to just thank you for being sharing your emotions. This is emotional stuff, and that's really what these horses are so. All horses are so good at. They have such a rich emotional language, and they're so sensitive. I was just talking to I got to interview Barbara Wheeler, the photographer. Does all. Oh my God, I know her experience. This is all taken off thanks to Marianne Simons. Thanks, Marianne.
Oh, good for her.
Yeah, but so I'm getting to talk to people. It's like this conversation is also just like, what? I get to talk to you about this stuff. This is incredible. So thank you for being like really open and sharing these experiences. Because what else are we here for? That's my opinion. But
feel deeply.
Right. It's like, and so I got this great opportunity. I'm just starting really on my early early phase where you were 30 years ago or so. I just got a grant to work with teenagers at risk.
Well done.
And I just met with them first week last week. So here we go. Well,
if there's ever anything I can do,
come on,
or you just let me know.
I would love to have more of a conversation offline if I can.
We will.
Then of course if I could come out to Chiron's Way, but I wanted to just finish up with Anna Barr, who's sitting behind you, because Hunter picked this card. He picked this card, by the way. I'm doing sound healings now.
I love that. So horses love sound healing.
You've been doing your expressive arts. You know this.
Yeah.
So how this happened real quickly is that I've been working with kids that are autistic, and as you know, many are sound sensitive or sound adverse or sound seeking, one of the two. In fact, I have some students that put their hands in their ears, that just, it's too much at a farm. so I started using tuning forks with the kids. Let's
Okay.
and so and I noticed how the horses were like really into this, and so then I started doing tuning the tuning forks with the horses alone, and then I got started getting older clients that are like in their 70s who live alone
Oh,
and depressed and
love that.
isolated, but they have physical disabilities. You know, a lot of them can't really
Yep.
walk very well. So I was like, well, let's try a meditation circle, and then that's when I got the sound bowls,
I love that.
and Hunter he goes to a different plane than we do. He's in another world, so he's in that veil. He picked that card, and
No wonder.
he picked the card when I do the, before we do the sound healing with, I keep it to like 10 people, and we get in a circle, and then Hunter and Romeo are off lead. And so this is interesting to me. I mean, one of the questions are which of your boundaries are self-imposed? And I have to really think about that, because I'm so, it's a little different thinking about boundaries, but there's some boundaries, maybe that aren't working. And how to identify, like I'm trying to think of a good example. Can you think of, like, how does that question come to you? And which of your boundaries are self-imposed, and where do they need to be the next question was, I think, can we read it? I don't know. I put it, I just thought that was a very good question from Anna Barr. And the question is, basically, where do I limit myself? Where do I hold myself? Where do I need to let go of? And which boundaries are self-imposed? Are they healthy, or do they need to be lifted or adapted? What do they keep out, and what do they keep in? It's just as that veil is getting thinner around us in all part of the world. Everyone,
I love the questions. They're really, for me, sort of the courageous, kind of in a way, healing questions, psychotherapeutic questions, the deep questions that horses ask us often. Sometimes when we're out there with our horses and no one else is listening, no one else is around, because we go like, we like, oh, I talking about these things are tender sometimes or personal. So we sometimes will do that. This great thing about sharing our lives with horses is we get to go out 24 hours a day and have these deep conversations with someone who listens in a profoundly deep way, but also insists that we come face to face sometimes with these types of questions. So they were important that they would invite, maybe push us into thinking maybe sometimes differently than
yeah,
we had thought about
that's
things
it.
before.
That's exactly it. And so how do we think how to like change that perception? Because we were just, you're talking about Bruce Lipton, that whole idea of perception, and and Hunter's like, he is the ultimate for me, because I'm riding him bareback now. He was unrideable, and I'm
Yeah.
just trying to keep him moving and exercising him. But it's very different type of riding, than
Yeah.
than your traditional. We're going to go in circles and
Right.
and work on the left lead and right lead. Nope, it's not about that. This is
When you're
this
riding him bareback, this is a beautiful opportunity for you, the two of you, to become a centaur.
exactly. It's like I really have to listen. So I was trying to go up this hill by all his the rest of the herd at the farm, and he just stopped
Yeah.
because he wanted to go. He wanted to have the whole herd came over to him, and they had
Yeah.
a conversation. And I just like, okay, we're gonna stop.
I love it.
Let go of that. It's so
And you're part
interesting,
of the herd then too, which is
right?
really fascinating. So now you have this great opportunity
It's
to
so
be,
much better than what I thought. That's the thing
yeah.
about this Anna Barr's teaching. So I want to just finish the last question. Or maybe you and Kim will be kind enough to let me talk to you both, because I think there'd be something more, even deeper. But what is? I mean, there's just so many surprise. Horses have so many surprises for us. But what are the surprises that you've seen already from this beautiful Council of Horses Oracle 40 card deck and guidebook?
Well, it's an Anbar story. I was at a book talk the weekend before last, and outside of the bookstore in this in our local mall, and there was two sort of senior ladies were walking by, and the one that was closest to where I was kind of looked over and then looked over again. And you could feel that her friend wanted to keep going, but she was being drawn in by whatever, the beautiful covers of the card, the display, who knows. And she kind of came over, and I had the cards spread out face down on the table and a bunch of posters there. And she just said, "I don't believe in that stuff." And I said, "You don't believe in horses?" And she goes, "No, I don't believe in this stuff." And she goes, "I believe in God and I believe in the devil, but I don't believe that, which is black and white, but I don't believe in any of this gray stuff in between." And so I spoke with her for a few minutes and got her to the place where that she agreed to just flip a card over. And her friend was just really wanting to hightail it out of there. But she said, "Yeah, okay." So she flipped a card, and it was Enbar. And she was, "Okay, so what's that supposed to mean?" And I thought, oh gosh, here she is. Her belief system, perfectly beautiful. Her belief system is that this stuff, which is for me, beautiful paintings of horses and essays about who they are and stories. So like to be a chameleon with our language is a really great belief and capacity to have. So whoever it is that I'm talking with, to be able to listen to what they're saying and then to match them with language that they're comfortable with, they can hear, that they can receive. And so I thought, oh goodness sakes, probably one of the, it's a card about a fairy horse. How is she going to be? How do I convey the message in this card for her? And so what I did was I just quickly skimmed through and ended up actually, Cameron, being in the last paragraph of the counsel. And it says, "Remember, dear traveler," and I just left that part out. It says, okay, here it says that the veil between worlds is not a divide, but rather a beautiful tapestry woven with threads of love, connection, and peace. Pardon me. As you weave your own unique thread into this exquisite fabric, you contribute to the eternal dance of creation, enriching the lives of both our kinds. Step outside the boundaries of your known reality and join the harmony of our vast interconnected universe. And I read that to her, and she went, "Oh, that's beautiful." She said, we were just at the quilting show just around the corner in the mall, and we were just doing that. We were just weaving. And I thought, oh, thank you, Enbar, for the perfect words to help this beautiful woman realize that we're all interconnected and that she's weaving things in her way and the horses are weaving things in their way. And so that was a beautiful, touching, I wouldn't say surprise, but I don't know, encounter. And I just thought, okay, always trust. It comes to, if we trust the horses, whatever horse we draw or whatever horse chooses us or we engage with when we're doing any kind of equine guided learning or whatever it might be, Grace taught me this, to trust the horses, and that when we do, the perfect encounter, the perfect remedy, the perfect conversation, the perfect impasse, exactly what that person needs is always revealed. Exactly what I need is always revealed. And then I have this opportunity based on my belief system, like the boundaries, the limitations, or the expansions, to explore it as deeply as I want. And I think that's why I love the questions so much, is even if we don't spend time in the counsel or even in the story, to ask, to skim through those questions, pardon me, and to notice maybe which one pulls me forward, or actually, I always like to notice which one kind of makes me step back a little bit, because that's probably where the deepest healing or learning lies. So that would be a really recent kind of enchanting encounter, unexpected, that someone who's totally not interested in this was drawn in and then drew the perfect card for her. And in there was the perfect message that she could hear in her way. I think maybe what I would envision is like, oh, there's a little seed kind of just might have gotten planted, and something that she can water if she ever feels drawn to do that.
Just gave a little gift, and she's going to walk away with it, whatever she needs to
Hope
do with
so.
it. Right. So this is you just never know. So I agree.
know.
The contemplations and the invitation alone in each of these, for each of these 40 herd members are so valuable. So yeah, this has been great. And quickly, so this is Council of Horses Oracle is available through Bear and Company. Where else can you find this?
Everywhere. It's so exciting. It's just available everywhere. And still, I really love my local bookstores, my local booksellers, the mom and pop shops where, we've been going to get our Dr. Seuss books when we were little kids, whatever it might be, to support them, to go in and ask them if they would order the deck in for you. Yes, it will take longer. The Amazon truck will not drive up your driveway the next day. And still, there's something so beautiful about supporting the herd in our own communities. And yet, if you just simply cannot wait, then all of the online sellers have them available as well.
I think
so
Spirit
it's
of
really
Horses.
Exciting.
Yes.
Pardon?
Spiritofthehorses.com. Isn't that Kim's site has that? I think it has it.
Yeah, they're available
everywhere. Yeah.
Available everywhere.
Awesome.
And I think November 21st is when they become available in Europe and the UK. So I know I have friends that are just chomping at the bit, literally, for them to be available there. So in North America, they're available now. And then a little bit longer. It seems to take a little longer for the publishing houses to reach out into the other places of the world.
Awesome. And then people want to learn more about your work. It's Chiron's Way or SandraWallin.com. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. Yeah. I really have, I have so many more questions for you, but
we'll have to talk again, I think.
Okay.
That would be great.
That'd be great. And I'd love to talk to you more about this grant too. And
Happy to.
An 8-week program. So it's really exciting.
Amazing. Well done. They're going to have an incredible time with you.
They're super good kids. It really, I'm like,
always.
It's so fun. But yeah.
And they show themselves, like if we think of ourselves as a mosaic, then different facets of us get brought to light when we're in the company of horses. And sometimes the teachers or the parents that think they know these students will come out and see what's happening when they're with the herd.
Yeah.
And they just, wow, really? They're able to do that? Oh, yeah.
Yep. Awesome, Sandra. Well, and to be continued. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cameron. It was lovely to speak with you.
Likewise. Have a great day.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Thanks again for listening to this episode. It just blows me away. I get to interview people like Sandra, Kim, Connie Funk, Marianne Simons. If you happen to know somebody that you think I should interview, please contact me. I'm just always looking to talk to more people about their experiences with horse-human relationships. And in the meantime, if you would like to look up about more what I'm doing, check me out at CamronAdibi.com. That's CamronAdibi.com. And stay tuned for more episodes of the Centaur Podcast. Thank you.